The Lust Killer of Oregon, Secrets Behind Jerry Brudos' Horror. Before you go, subscribe for more gripping crime stories. Like for answers and share your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive into true crime together. Salem, Oregon, May 1969. The smell hit them first. When detectives from the Oregon State Police stepped into the Brudos family garage, it was faint but unmistakable. The heavy scent of decay mixed with motor oil and damp concrete. In one corner, next to a workbench cluttered with wires, cords, and tools, was a deep chest freezer. The lid was sealed with duct tape. One officer peeled it back slowly and froze. What they saw inside would uncover one of the most horrifying serial murder cases in the Pacific Northwest. Just hours earlier, police had been following up on a missing persons report. A 22-year-old college student named Karen Sprinker, who had vanished from a department store parking garage. Witnesses described a large man wearing women's clothing and a wig, loitering near the exit ramp. That detail alone had seemed bizarre, but when investigators traced the last phone calls made to Karen's home, one number stood out, registered to a local man named Jerry Brudos. Married, 2 kids, worked for the power company, a model citizen on paper. But something about his calm, almost cheerful voice on the phone didn't sit right with them. Detectives decided to visit. His wife, Darcy, opened the door with a nervous smile. The house was tidy, quiet, almost too normal. But when they asked to look in the garage, she hesitated. Her hands trembled slightly. "Jerry doesn't like people going in there," she whispered. That was enough for them to insist. Inside, the garage looked like an amateur workshop. Old televisions, wires, shoes, dozens of women's shoes, lined neatly on shelves. At first glance, it seemed harmless, but when an officer accidentally kicked or dashed a bucket near the wall, a Polaroid fluttered out. It was a picture of a woman, lifeless, her body staged like a mannequin, the same missing student they'd been searching for. That moment broke everything open. Backup was called immediately. Detectives began searching deeper, pulling boxes, moving shelves. Beneath a tarp lay something far worse than photographs, a rope attached to a hanging pulley, stained dark. And in that freezer corner, when they finally pried it open, what they found confirmed their worst fear. The missing women were never coming home. But what truly chilled the investigation wasn't just what was inside, it was what they didn't yet know. Because as police began questioning Brudos' wife, she said something that made the lead detective's blood run cold. He told me never to go near the river behind the house. The morning after the freezer discovery, Salem detectives returned with a search warrant, this time with a forensic team and evidence vans. Reporters had already started circling the quiet neighborhood, but few could imagine what was truly buried beneath that tidy suburban calm. Inside the Brudos house, investigators began piecing together the secret life of a man who looked like everyone else. A husband, a father, a blue-collar worker. But behind his ordinary smile lay a lifetime of obsession, humiliation, and rage. As they searched through Jerry Brudos' personal belongings, patterns began to emerge. Dozens of women's shoes, carefully polished and organized by style. Boxes of undergarments. Stacks of magazines showing models in high heels. But among them were photos. Polaroids of women who looked frozen in time. Some alive, posing nervously. Others, not. Each image was dated, cataloged with a level of detail that made detectives shudder. This wasn't a man who acted out of impulse. This was ritual. When they questioned his wife, Darcy, her voice trembled but her words came fast, as if she'd been waiting years to let them out. "He made me stay in the bedroom," she whispered. "He said never to come out when he was in the garage. If I did, he'd get angry." Detectives asked if she'd ever seen anything suspicious. She nodded toward the riverbank visible from their backyard window. "He used to go there late at night with big bags," she said. The next day, divers were sent to the nearby Willamette River. Within hours, they made a grim discovery. A body caught beneath the rocks, bound and weighted with car parts. The coroner confirmed what investigators feared. The remains belonged to another missing young woman, 19-year-old Linda Slauson. Now the investigation turned into a race against time. Detectives began re-examining disappearances from the past year, women who had vanished near shopping centers or college campuses. The same pattern appeared again and again. Women alone, approached by a man claiming to be a photographer or a model scout. Brudos had used charm, deception, and confidence to lure them in. When officers brought him in for questioning, Jerry Brudos didn't deny knowing the victims. He smiled, a slow, unnerving grin, and said, "You wouldn't understand. It's not about killing, it's about control." Then, as detectives exchanged stunned looks, Brudos leaned back and whispered, "You should check the attic next." And that's when everything they thought that they knew about his crimes, and how long they had been happening, began to unravel. When investigators climbed into Jerry Brudos' attic, the air was thick with dust, and something else, something darker. The flashlight beams cut through the gloom to reveal shelves lined with boxes. Each box was neatly labeled with women's names, dates, and sometimes a single word: red heels, night dress, blonde. Inside were trophies, personal belongings of his victims, but among the trinkets and clothing were Polaroids that told the real story, stage photographs of women in deathly poses, their bodies arranged as if for fashion shoots. The forensics team froze. Every item was evidence of his need for dominance, every photo a moment of control he could relive. But then they found something that made even the seasoned officers recoil: a mannequin wearing one of the victims' clothing, surrounded by cameras and lights. This was Brudos' studio. He had recreated a world where he was the photographer, the director, and the god of his own twisted fantasy. Downstairs, when detectives confronted him with the photos, Brudos barely flinched. "They were beautiful," he said calmly. "They didn't know how beautiful they could be. I just helped them stay that way." His words were ice, emotionless, detached. Under intense interrogation, the truth poured out piece by piece. He confessed to killing at least 4 women between 1968 and 1969. His methods were meticulous. He'd lure them to his home under the guise of a photo shoot, strangle them, and then photograph their bodies. He would keep their shoes, sometimes their clothing, and store the photos to revisit later. It wasn't murder for thrill. It was art in his sick mind, a way to immortalize his dominance. When Darcy was asked how she didn't know, she broke down. "He made me take pictures of him with them sometimes," she admitted. "He said if I told anyone, he'd kill me too." It became clear she had been a prisoner in her own home, living under the control of a man who thrived on fear. The case shocked Oregon. In 1969, Brudos was arrested and quickly became known nationwide as the Lust Killer. His calm demeanor in court, his smirking interviews, and his obsession with his collection made him one of the most disturbing serial killers of his era. But even in prison, he showed no remorse. When asked by a journalist why he did it, Brudos looked straight into the camera and said, "Because they never." R said, "No, not after." It was then everyone realized Jerry Brudos wasn't just driven by lust. He was driven by the desire to possess, to control, to never be rejected again. And the basement, the attic, the photos, they weren't just evidence of his crimes. They were monuments to his madness,